It's time for another episode of Tucson Means Business, featuring Tucson's top entrepreneurs and leaders in the business world. And now your host, Mark Bishop.
My special guest businessman in Tucson is a gentleman who has a skill set that is unique, authentic, and irresistible. I'm referring to Jeffrey Prather. He's a retired Army officer, ex-DEA special agent, and a former DIA intelligence officer turned whistleblower. Now, that we'll get into a little bit later, how he has been targeted by the feds. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Thanks, Mark.
Now, in addition to hosting his own talk radio show, The Prather Point, he is also a martial arts master and teacher, and an Apache wisdom teacher, kinetic quotient creator and trainer, firearms and horsemanship instructor, and a published author. Along with that, he's a SAG film actor. That's the the legal membership. A speaker, father, husband, and a chaplain. Wow. And if that's not enough, he also has a business in motivation and is available for one-on-one mentoring, group training, interviews, speaking engagements, and corporate team building events. Man, you are a busy soul, aren't you?
You make me sound tired when I listen to all that.
Well, I want to get it all out of the way. I mean, it's who you are. Where does one start in interviewing you, my friend?
Wherever you like.
All right. Well,
this is Tucson business. I guess I could say I've been in business in Tucson since 1990 is when I opened my martial arts business.
Right. And what's that called again?
That's called BujinkanUSA.com. Bujinkan means Warrior Spirit School. And that's an authentic Japanese ninja tradition. I studied in Japan with the Grandmaster.
Wow. And where are you located?
We're at 4518 East Broadway, just west of Swan on the south side, right next to Polish Cottage and Crave Coffee.
Are you a native Tucsonan, Jeffrey, or from some other part of this wonderful country?
No, I'm not. My wife is, but I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Well, you founded one business in 1990. What was that again? BujinkanUSA.com. BUJINKANUSA.com. All right, so that was the one in 1990. Then you did a second since, 95. What was that one? What was that called?
Warrior School was formerly LLC'd in 2002, but it's really been around since 95. And warriorschool.com is mainly a defense consultant company. I have trained over 20,000 military personnel with every branch, including the Coast Guard, with classes as big as 600.
Wow.
Including all the intelligence agencies, most of the federal agencies. But I also train locals, and I have a handgun martial arts class every Wednesday night. And that's still going. That's at the same location, warriorschool.com.
Well, you're going through everything else with, the virus at the moment. How's business for you overall? Are you unique?
Well, we had to shut down because we fall under a bar or yoga studio. So according to the mayor and the governor, we did shut down. We have reopened. We are taking precautions. But my third business is grin-x.com, and that's competitive intelligence. And I really specialize in intelligence, especially in the biotech field. So I'm very well aware of what COVID-19 is and what it isn't, and what the precautions need to be.
All right, we might come back a little later then on the Grin-X. Now, talking about the martial arts, you were inducted twice into the U.S. Martial Arts Hall of Fame and featured in U.S. and Japanese martial arts magazines and published in tactical journals as a martial arts master. That's not a bad effort. At what age did you seek that discipline out, and why, may I ask?
That's a good story. So, first off, I was adopted out of St. Joseph's Orphanage by a wonderful couple, and product of rape, by the way, could still be aborted under today's laws, but wasn't. And my adopted dad wanted me to join the football team. I was afraid. So he didn't scold me. He just started taking me to martial arts schools. And I started back in 1967. That's when I began martial arts, and I've still stayed with it ever since.
Oh, well, I tell you what, your life history, which we're getting into, Jeffrey, reads like a Tom Clancy thriller. Did you, growing up as an adopted orphan, dream of what you might want to be, or perhaps the adventures your journey has taken you?
Yeah, I joke that there's pictures of me, doing as a kid all the stuff I'm doing now, and that I haven't really changed much. And I saw where I wanted to go, and my dad is still alive, and he is a World War II Pacific veteran, and so I'm a retired Army veteran. He exposed me also to Apache culture later on. I much later found out that my birth mom was born in Indian Territory. So a lot of the things he exposed me to sent me to private Catholic school where I had a good education and, most importantly, discipline. So yeah, I've really gotten to do so much, more than I deserve. I'm very blessed.
You've lived a great life. Now, a world-class firearms instructor, retired, disabled Army veteran. This is now another business you run. But when we talk about specializing in high-stakes strategic analysis, like continuity of operations, human terrain, and competitive intelligence preparation of the marketplace, well, when does this come into play? How does that work in the business world?
Well, so I've been an intelligence officer. I was commissioned in 1984 from ROTC at Ohio State when I got my master's in international relations. I have 2 bachelors from from the University of Arizona. But I became a military intelligence officer back then, and then I've stayed in the reserves for about 25 years. And then I ended up in the Defense Intelligence Agency, and I also worked intelligence. For example, I worked at the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Task Force Office, HIDTA, with the DEA here in Tucson. So I've done intelligence for a long time. And I used to do it through Warrior School, which I used to do a lot of security as well. Like I've bodyguarded presidential candidates and McCain and Santorum and folks like that. But competitive intelligence is really something different that I got into in 2014 when a longtime friend and businessman needed some help. And so I started doing competitive intelligence, which is competitive intelligence is taking a company and showing it where it's in the marketplace, who its friends are, who its enemies are, and what's the route to success, the waypoints, navigating the human terrain. A lot of people don't even know what it is. They think it's business intelligence.
Mm. Well, I mean, I'm trying to, racking my brains around it. I hadn't heard of it before now, but the closest I can come to it is like when you do a business proposition or something. It's like a SWOT analysis, the SWOT analysis, I should say. The strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats of even forming the company or the business related to who else is out there, who are your competitors. But this isn't that, is it?
No, it's part of that. And part of that is business security, operational security. And a lot of folks think only of cybersecurity and physical security and personnel security, but that's passive and reactive. Competitive intelligence. And when I first got into this with my friend back in 2014, he had a lot of breaches, and he was working and I mean, it's on the GRIN-X website. So this is history. And by the way, GRIN stands for Genetics, Robotics, Information Technology, and Nanotechnology -X, thecrossroads.com. So I've really spent most of my, since 2014, in the genetics, a little bit in the end of nano technology, but keeps me pretty busy. But for example, he was with a a genetics company, and he was working on a gene therapy cure for HIV/AIDS. And one of the things that he didn't realize at the time was that the big pharma companies make billions of dollars a year medicating those with HIV/AIDS. So one of the things after I helped him shore up his physical security and other breaches was to let him know who his threats were. And the threats, of course, when your company is labeled as a disruptive threat to $1 billion industries, then you can expect corporations to come after you. And that doesn't mean shooting you or anything, but that means, for example, corporate espionage is stealing technology, and that's been happening. The biggest story of that was in January when Dr. Lieber at Harvard was arrested by the FBI for spying for Wuhan. And the other part of that is corporate sabotage, which can just be tying you up in court while your patents or trademarks languish.
Ah, right. Well, that makes sense. Yeah, interesting. Fascinating stuff. Well, we're going to come back on the GreenX thing too. That appeals to me a little, but I want to go on to this now. Now, you're an ex-DEA special agent, right? And a former DIA branch chief, specializing in high-stakes strategic analysis. And this was the, continuity of operations, human terrain, competitive intelligence. So you're really prepared, aren't you, with your background for the marketplace? What advice would you give, business today in a nutshell?
Well, for example, COOP, continuity of operations, is something I did for the DIA headquarters. Of course, that's the Defense Intelligence Agency. That's the Pentagon CIA. And what that, in a nutshell, means is, for example, if there was another 9/11 strike in D.C., where would the command structure move and be able to function? And I don't know if you remember back when during the Iran hostage situation under President Carter, and President Reagan was coming in, but that's when Delta Force got its first operation, and that was a crisis because there was a CH-47 that crashed sliced into a C-130 in the desert, and the Delta commander, Jerry Beckwith back then, taped a light stick, a chem light stick, onto a stick and stuck it in the ground, and that became, in the crisis and the flames and the death, and that became the center of operations. So he had to move from his command aircraft to sticking a light stick in the desert. So continuity of operations, I also did this for the DEA in New York, is being able to continue your business operations. The first thing always is personnel safety. But after that, you want to be able to move to another location quickly and vitally, whether that's on foot or bicycle or whatever, and continue. And right now, you're seeing a lot of businesses that did not have any COOP plans in place.
Right.
They weren't prepared to continue with this plague, which really, I talk about this on my show, and another website is jeffreyprather.com with my podcast. But really, this was a bioweapon that was released to create a psychological operations impact for economic warfare with the Chinese. This is really what that is, and it has served its purpose. And a lot of people weren't prepared for that. The folks that I work for obviously were prepared because we planned for that. But surprisingly, a lot of big businesses do not, even if they have a competitive intelligence shop. And most major companies do have a competitive intelligence shop, but it's pretty limited in scope.
Yeah, well, let's face it, a lot of companies don't even have security for their online networks and so on for their IT structures. Never mind anything else.
That's true too. They often think that an IT guy is a cybersecurity guy, and it's not the same thing at all.
No, cybersecurity is critical these days. Interesting thought though on the Chinese in reference to the COVID-19. We might come back on that a bit later. Now a thought leader. You're a business coach, radio host, life coach, skills teacher, a chaplain, and a dad and a husband. I'm surprised you found time for that. But how does this role for you intertwine with such a dynamic career history?
Well, I integrate it all. My chaplaincy is ChristChaplaincy.com, and we founded that 10 years ago, and we do our services online out of our homes, for example, and people who do horsemanship with me are part of the chaplaincy sometimes. I've had businessmen. I've had scientists from Australia come and do horsemanship with me. Said it was a life-changing experience because it's not about just riding or competing. It's about connecting with the horse in the native tradition of relationing.
Right.
And these are really, we're talking, genius scientists and Nobel Prize winners. So, it is a matter of looking at things differently and then integrating them. People think it's just about a profit, and that is the worst thing to do business for. But anybody from Zig Ziglar, anybody will tell you that.
I'm speaking with Jeffrey Prather on Tucson Means Business. He's a published author as well. We're going to go into his books in just a second, but I do want to remind you we're proudly sponsored by the 49ers Golf and Country Club, and they're open for business. The restaurant is, but of course with the regulations and the stretching and the distances apart and so on. But new menu and open for business. Take away, of course, or take out, and things are coming back there. So keep that in mind. And new menu, great food, and open for business. That's the 49ers Grill, the Rincon Grill up on Tanque Verde. Jeffrey Prather. Let's talk about your first book here. Well, was it your first? Chase, I think it was called. Was that your first book?
That was my second.
That was your second. What was your first book?
First book was Initiation. Boys are born, men are trained. My journey as an Apache medicine man.
Right. Now, Initiation was the first book. Boys are born, men are trained. Hell of a good title. What's the book about?
Well, I was telling you that my adopted dad exposed me to my native heritage. And when I was out here at the University of Arizona in 1978, I went into a moccasin store and met an Apache elder, and he adopted me and trained me. And really, the book is about that story, but the overreaching view, because I've taught that initiation for over 30 years now, and that's taught worldwide. I've taught that in Australia, taught that in Japan.
Can you
share
a little bit about that? What is an initiation? Explain what that is.
Well, the premise is that our society is in crisis, and our society is in crisis not only because we are killing our children and preying on our children, which is abortion. I'm totally anti-abortion. But also because children are preying on each other. Children are raping and murdering each other at ever younger ages. And no society that preys on their young will survive.
Right.
It's just simple math. So the reason that I posit that children are preying each other is because physically grown males, and to a lesser extent females, are not spiritually or emotionally or mentally mature. And so that's why you see all the gangs, and you see, at the worst part, you see gangs. At the best part, you see shows like Friends, where there are 30-somethings who just really have no concept of how to conduct themselves. And the reason for that, in turn, is that there are no rites of passage training kids at adolescence, at puberty, for adulthood. And what tribal cultures do, especially the Apache, but all of tribal cultures, the Maasai in Africa,
All right.
they all, traditionally, at puberty, they separate the genders and they train them. And then there's a time period when their childhood ends. And they are expected then to not just be physically you're mature when you can reproduce, but mentally and emotionally and spiritually is something else. When you can relate well, when you can interact well, when you can serve well, when you can love well.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a much more difficult proposition that we are not taught at all today. So that's the premise of the book. And in tribal cultures, we think of cycles as spring, summer, winter, fall.
Yes.
But tribal people think of childhood, youth, adulthood, and old age. But it's a good book. It's a funny book.
Interesting. And
it's true, and it happens all around Tucson.
This can be got on Amazon, of course.
Yeah, and you can still go up to Steve's Desert Sun shop. Is up. Give him a plug there up on Sunrise and Swan, and he's still there. And people who read the book walk in and say, "Wow, Steve's just like you said he was in the book." My Apache teacher Philip passed on in '88 when I started teaching. But it's helped a lot of people. I have students who've been with me for 30 years, and that training has really transformed their lives. Quinceañeras and bar mitzvahs and bar mitzvahs are pretty just social. They're not really that practical.
No, I understand where you're coming from with that. When I had the fortune when I was growing up in Australia to live in the outback at different times, and I'm talking outback, and I lived with indigenous tribes, and it was there that I saw the first experience of 12-year-old boys being sent out to hunt on their own and survive. Walkabout if they were going to go into manhood. Walkabout is very much that is walkabout, but also the tribe moving together and moving around, very much like I think the indigenous American Indians, but manhood.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That is the Apache and the Aborigines of Australia. I love Australia. They have a lot in common.
Yeah, and by gee, I mean, when you're just out there at 12 years of age with a spear and maybe a shield and just the good old boomerang, which does come back, that's about it. With some big predators coming at you, I mean, my hat's off to them. Always an interesting show with the 49ers Golf and Country Club sponsoring this Tucson Means Business. That we're very grateful for. And, it'd be nice for you to meet somebody by the name of Mackenzie. I call her Macca. Mackenzie Taylor is her name. Hi there, Macca.
Hi, great to see you.
Mackenzie Taylor is the executive chef of the 49ers. And she is also the food and beverage manager, correct?
That's correct,
You're
yes.
a busy little girl, aren't you?
Lots and lots to do.
What's your background? How on earth did you get into food?
Well, I fell in love with food when I was actually pregnant with my daughter 13 and a half years ago and was watching Martha Stewart a lot. And I decided I really wanted to learn how to cook just like she did. And so I just got a passion for cooking and baking and entertaining. And so when I came to Tucson 12 years ago, I enrolled at Pima Community College through their culinary school program and spent 2.5 years in that program, met some amazing local chefs, had the opportunity to start working for a catering company in town, worked with them for many years, worked at a couple restaurants downtown, and just really expanded my horizons. When I got the opportunity to be the executive chef at Pantano Christian Church on the east side. That was amazing. We got to feed so many people, and it was such a community-driven atmosphere. It was amazing.
I think it was in the vicinity of some 2,000 or something, wasn't it?
Yes, we have a lot of wonderful members who come weekly and who join us for breakfast and lunch.
That's a lot of cooking, isn't it?
It was a lot of cooking. It was a lot of cooking, but it truly prepared me for what we're doing now, too, at the country club. So.
There you go. Now, this wonderful training that you got at Pima, what was that, 2 years, did you say?
Yeah, it was just over 2 years. And it's an amazing culinary program that's local here in town. It's all local chefs who are the instructors.
Right.
So you learn everything from hot foods to garde manger, to baking, to pastry. It's amazing.
The works. You took to it like a duck takes to water.
Exactly. Or orange sauce.
Because it's evident in your food. I mean, people at the Rincon Grill, which is at the 49ers Golf and Country Club, who proudly sponsor Tucson Means Business, they're raving about all your wonderful changes and things that you've done. So I think you learnt with a passion, and I think it's part of you. It's just who you are, yes?
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. The passion definitely radiates. I always say if you don't have passion in the kitchen, get out because it is too hot and crazy in there if you're not doing what you love.
Exactly. And although, you're regarded as back of house because as executive chef, you're teaching and training and also overseeing the other chefs and other people in what we call the kitchen area and so on. But you're also front of house, aren't you, with your other role?
Yes. So I've had such an interest in banquets and people. I love people. I always say they can't keep me back in the kitchen. I've got to come out to the floor, see the dining room, talk to people, touch tables, just check on everything. I really want to make sure that the quality of the service and the food that you're getting when you come into the 49er Country Club is just overall 100%. It's really been amazing to be able to work with the front of house team, which I call the hospitality team. So our hospitality team and our culinary team really have the same direction, the same vision for where we're going. And I think that's really exciting to see.
It is. And you are leading the fray. There's no doubt about that. And when we talk about, there's fine dining and then there's just, finger foods, right? And just bar foods. It's interesting that the Rincon Grill is neither.
Right.
But it's all.
It's everything. Exactly. We want you to have amazing bar food. We want you to have a nice cold beer after a hot game of golf out there and feel comfortable ordering soft pretzels and wings. But we also want to really give you a variety on our dinner menu as well of, beautiful mahi-mahi and salmon and chicken piccata. And of course, it wouldn't be a country club without a perfect club sandwich. So we definitely have those offerings as well.
Mackenzie Taylor, Executive Chef Extraordinaire of the Rincon Grill. When you do go there, ask for her. She'd love to meet you. We'll talk more with her later on. Talking with Jeffrey Prather, your second book is called Chase. It's about a Border Patrol agent and an Apache rancher, John Horse, with the fight to stop terrorists smuggling a suitcase, nuke, across the southern border to the Fiesta Bowl. I've been here long enough to know and remember the Fiesta Bowl. This is fact-based fiction by an ex-DEA special agent, Jeffrey, whom you're listening to, who spent a decade on the border. I bet you got a few stories there to talk about. Yeah,
sure do. I was on the border with DEA from 1990 to 2000.
Okay, and you want to share anything that you can share? Let's put it that way. Sure. Well, let's talk about the book. The book is about terrorists trying to get across the border. Americans back east don't realize the borders here open as much as what we've had and what we've got. And there's lots of bad eggs that come across, parts of the world to come up through Mexico, don't they? And
they sure do.
Here is a case with smuggling a suitcase with a nuke in it across the southern border. What was the plan to do with that nuke?
So that was this, and all at the end of every chapter of the book, I show newspaper articles or research that shows how feasible this could happen. When Russia falls, they sell some of their nukes. Muslim terrorists buy some of them. The book actually starts off in the Burj, the highest building in the world, and then it shows the suitcase nuke coming across and being smuggled up by terrorist groups. And there are documented terrorist groups on the border, and I've spent a lot of time on the border. In 1993, my first big case was seizing 2,000 pounds of cocaine in Nogales. It was on CNN and U.S. News, and it was on horseback. And so the book is it's fiction, but it's very close to reality.
Right.
Because these transnational cartels are bigger than governments, and nothing passes through the plazas, the corridors from Arizona to Mexico without being paid by the cartels. So originally it was going to be a script, and it was because I had done a movie with Academy Award winner Wes Studi. He's a Cherokee Vietnam vet, and he got a hold of Val Kilmer, and Val Kilmer called me up, and Val was going to do it, but as what happens with many movie deals, it fell apart.
That was a shame.
But it's still a really good book.
Because I think if that had have come out as a movie, at that time or just after, I think people would realize a little more about just how serious the border factor is. All they see, and it upsets me too, all they see is the media showing, babies behind cages and families starving or starving of water. They don't see the other side of it by the looks of things. I mean, I'm a guy looking in from the outside, you know what I mean? And it's obvious to me. So God knows to guys like you and the things you saw. Are the cartels that strong, are they? Are they really? I mean, movies are movies, but it's all about money, right?
Yeah, and that's why the movie didn't get made, is because it was too politically incorrect. And the cartels are stronger than you think. Again, I did a pilot for a TV show because I've done TV as well on the border, and I learned there that there were congressmen, people that had been bought off. And, the fentanyl crisis in America is fentanyl coming up through the border, but it's coming out of China. The human slavery is resist. Drugs I call chemical slavery.
Right.
And then illegal smuggling is human slavery, and often child and female predatory slavery. So It's really a terrible scourge, and it's not at all what it's portrayed to be in the media. But I'll say quickly, I worked first in the Army and the PSYOP officer and with the 7 Special Forces all through Central and South America. And then I went back with the DEA when I was a snowcap special operator. And the Latin American people, Central and South American people are great people. I've been welcomed into so many homes, little dirt floor homes, and fed. And I have worked at all levels at senior government in the Andes with the Aymara Indians. Great people. And most of them are very hardworking and patriotic and religious. But the governments are very corrupt. Unfortunately, ours is that corrupt now, too. It's being reformed, but it's pretty bad.
Now, the third book was all about the Japanese specialty fighting, okay? That's an ancient Japanese art, very special. How do you transform all of that into a book? Is it about the history behind it or the actual movements itself, or what's that book called?
Well, that book is CQC, Close Quarter Combat Book. That's out of print, and that is I trained about 17,000 military personnel and combatives for when when the war on terror was happening. There was a requirement. So that's when I was doing 600 students a day with 10 assistant instructors down at Camp Shelby. And that's based upon my martial art, which is ninjutsu, which the ninja are not what they are portrayed in the movies, because just like the Indians aren't what they're portrayed, because the victors write the history. So, it's a counterculture, just like Native culture is here. But that book's out of print. But I'm writing a lot of books right now. But the book and the 4 DVDs used to sell in Army, Air Force exchange stores worldwide. That was really nice.
Yeah,
I was honored to be able to do that.
The exchange stores do very well in lots of good different products. So let me ask you this, Jeffrey, for any budding young writers out there, what's the best advice that you can give them when they're starting out?
Well, they should write about what they know. That's really important, and what they're passionate about. A lot of people have asked me to write my story about my whistleblowing and being fired by DEA 1 year from retirement. But that wasn't that big a deal to me. I may one of these days. But initiation was really important to me to show how we could heal society and help our youth grow up. And I've done that a great deal.
So let me ask
Case
you,
was a lot of fun.
when you, I mean, did you take down notes for later on when you were doing, your work to write about, or when you were ready, did you just sort of sit down and it started to flow?
Well, that's an interesting question. So when Philip died, I was deployed and I wrote his sister up on San Carlos Reservation, and she wrote me back he died. And so that's when I started teaching, because he had told me that I needed to carry on this tradition. And so I've been teaching that for over 30 years. And so, I mean, it's pretty second nature to me. I have teachers around the country that teach it. A lot of kids that have grown up doing it. A lot of lives that have been saved and changed by doing that. So when DEA was coming after me for my whistleblowing, they moved me to New York. And I'm a country boy. My horses are out back, and I'm always out. In New York, I had no interest in, so I just sat down and wrote. I just wrote and wrote and wrote. It's still, I'm starting to do that as I'm getting older now, 63. But I'm still pretty busy. But that's what you got to do. But you got to write. But because I had done it for so long, it flowed out of me very
Yeah, you're writing what's already imprinted. It's in your soul. When we come back, we're going to talk to Jeffrey Prather about his whistleblowing days. What was the output of that? Why, how, and what and where? And some other very interesting things as well. Because you're listening to Tucson Means Business. He is a businessman and a very busy businessman here in Tucson. Your host is Mark Bishop, and I'm very honored to have as our sponsor the 49ers Golf and Country Club, very loyal to me, both from my radio days and now from my podcasting days as well here on Tucson Business RadioX. So the 49ers is open. The grill is open, great food, new menu, and so on. You can play golf, you just, they've even got little things in the cup, so you don't have to go touching the stick, the flag, and so on. And, when you eat and all of that, you just make sure that you're positioned X amount of feet apart in the restaurant anyways. Plenty of room, so, and just follow the rules. But we'd love to see you back there. Jeffrey Prather is my guest. It's Tucson Means Business on the Business Radio X network across America. Now, Jeffrey, why has Warrior School trained units from every branch of the U.S. military, including the Coast Guard, CIA, the DIA, the NSA, and many special operations forces, as well as teams from local, state, and federal law enforcement, including the FBI?
Well, so when I was with 7 Special Forces Group, I wasn't on a team, but I was on a B team, which is a support team because I was the intel guy. But I got to go to Special Operations Tactics School, which is precision shooting. So I was taught by the best gunfighters in the world, Delta operators, how to shoot. For you, down under, that's SAS. That's the corollary. It was developed off the British SAS. And then I became a DEA firearms instructor. That's a very difficult course in '93. So I've always been teaching a lot of gunfighting and firearms. And I've also gotten to go to evasive driving, like wounded passenger driving school and all that. So,
how did you come to be a strategy consultant to Tucson-based? Is it Calimune or Calimune, which sold to CSL Beering for something like $416,000? Wasn't that $1 million? And my research, I came across that.
$416 million. Hear me?
Yeah, I've lost you, Jeffrey. I've lost you again. Something's gone wrong with the old phone here. Maybe someone's listening in, eh? Oh, not a problem. What I want to do, Jeffrey, is come back and talk about some other stuff with you and some other... You're very interesting. You've got a great history, and I'd love to do another show with you and talk about lots of things that maybe we don't know about. I might do that on the Mark Bishop Show, which is a separate deal. And you know, we could find out a little bit more about perhaps what's going on in the world today. Jeffrey Prather was my guest. He's here in Tucson. He's a businessman and lots of wonderful past history. And he was brought to us today by the 49ers Golf and Country Club. And I'll have him back on again. And in the interim, go to jeffreyprather.com and hear his podcasts. There's quite a few on there, and there's a lot of interesting stuff. And, you know, judge for yourself, okay? So I trust you enjoyed what you did here. We'll come back with another Tucson Means Business fairly soon.